The reality is that drugs and devices are never going to be the same thing. I wanted to talk about what I perceive to be a problem that I've been seeing over the last 8 or 9 years of my career in combination products. I think the way I used to look at drug device combination products has shifted over the course of my maturity in the industry. I've come to realize that instead of trying to make combination products, the drug and the device part operate in the same way, the key is just to make sure that they're working together. And that the main issue that's missing in combination product development, lifecycle management, launch is harmony. And it's missing on three levels. Because drugs and devices operate between pharma and device regulations, timelines, and cultures, the challenge is not only the technical complexity of trying to work on something that has a formulation clinical component, but also one that has a functional performance delivery component. And beyond those challenges, there is a lack of harmony that exists on three levels that puts us in a place where we're working against ourselves. And those three are global regulation, CXO and sponsor collaboration, and internal cross-functional execution between the drug and device teams. Without these three levels moving towards harmony, we're really multiplying and delaying innovation, which is getting in the way of products getting into patients' hands. So the way that I want to approach it is I want to talk about combination products, what they are, the issues slowing us down, and three levels of harmonization and a little bit of detail around that. We've heard a lot about combination products, and I think the term combination product gets tossed around quite a bit when you talk about cancer drugs. And so what we're talking about here is drug device combination products. And there's a whole lot more examples. These are just some. Things like prefilled syringes, IV bags, inhalers, auto-injectors, microneedle array patches, drug droppers, drug-eluting stents, co-packaged kits like vial kits, nebulizers that involve a drug and a nebulizer that you're inhaling via. Combination product is a therapeutic that combines a drug, biologic, and or medical device in a way that they work together to achieve their intended use. Per the FDA definition, a drug and a biologic is considered a combination product. But for the intents and purposes of this, I'm just going to focus on the drug device combination product. There are two important factors that are considerations. What is the type of combination product that you're working with? The first factor is the primary mode of action. Is the drug doing the heavy lifting, or is the device? To use two examples, in a prefilled syringe, and it's not 100% the case, there are very minor exceptions, but 99% of the time, the drug is doing the heavy lifting. The purpose of the syringe is to allow delivery of the contents of the syringe. For a device-led combination product, it's flipped. The device is doing the heavy lifting. In this case, we're talking about a drug-eluting stent where the primary function of the device is really mechanical, expanding the vessel so that blood can flow through, and the drug is just icing on the cake. The way this impacts is your submission pathway. Are you going via a device submission, or are you going to go via a drug submission? Are you going to set up a device quality system with a bolt-on elements for drug, or are you going to set up a drug quality system and bolt on some of the important device components? The second part is, how are they combined? By and large, pretty much all jurisdictions have a distinction where they talk about a product where it's all in one. In the US, it's called single entity. In Europe, it's called integral. There's different nomenclature across the world, but the idea is something like a prefilled syringe or an EpiPen or an IV bag where you can pick up the one piece and it's all there. The other option is co-packaged combination product where everything is in the same box, but there are still some assembly steps managing the components. These are drug device or biologic products packaged together in a single unit, like a vial, an injector in one box, or a vial for reconstitution, a drug-filled vial, a diluent, and injectors, vial adapters, etc. There's different configurations. And the last one is cross-labeled combination products. These are referencing each other, so they can be individually, so they're supposed to be used together. Some IV bags have proprietary vials they're supposed to be used with, and they reconstitute. And there's a whole bunch of examples of the cross-labeled nebulizers are also a good example where the drug is designed to fit into a certain nebulizer. They're sold separately. Now, Combinations used to be niche, but they're not anymore. The global market for combination products has grown significantly. The market for combination products is projected to reach 181 billion by 2030, driven by innovation in biologics and device-related delivery. Patients now expect to deliver therapies to themselves at home. Things like auto-injectors, wearable patches, connected devices are now standard of care in some sectors. Drug device integration now starts really early, especially for biologics, oncology, autoimmune therapies. Companies don't look at devices when they're looking at their portfolio like it's sophisticated packaging. They look at it like it's a core part of their development and a key enabler for their ability to deliver products to patients. Global regulators are more experienced with combination products than ever before. FDA, EMA, China, and Japan have all issued some expectations around combination products. Some are more mature than others, but it does reflect years and years of learning as far as the industry goes. How we approach our combination products has evolved. And I think understanding this timeline is really important. I think what I want to make clear is, yes, we have made progress, but there's still a lot to be dealt with. And while our understanding has evolved, the alignment is still slowing us down, the misalignment, I should say. So in the early 2000s, combination products were treated, like I said, sophisticated packaging add-ons. As we started getting into the 2010s, particularly the early 2010s, devices became essential for usability and access. One company, Amgen, got a big warning letter that sent reverberations through the industry, and we found that there was all of a sudden, a lot of investment in making sure that companies were set up and compliant to 21 CFR Part 4 that took effect in 2013. And development teams started including them as part of their development. It started becoming, it was often too late. Now, combination products starts as part of planning. It starts early. People are talking about combination products often in preclinical stages. FDA, depending on the configuration going into IND, may expect human factors, performance characterization, and regulatory strategies are planned out way earlier on. The next frontier is learning to work together, and that's the most important part. We need to align global expectations. Partnerships between CXOs and sponsors need to be better. Internal teams, drug device counterparts need to keep pace. The issue is silos. Regulators like FDA, EMA, PMDA are now more experienced, but they're experienced by themselves. You have things like MDSAP, you have mutual recognition agreements on the device side. There is no mutual recognition at all when it comes to combination products. There's no regulatory reliance practices at all. There's not coordination across regions or between drug and device agencies. So global execution is slow, it's fragmented. People talk about harmonizing devices by themselves via IMDRF and forums like it. People talk about harmonizing drugs through forums like ICH and PICS. Trying to do each one of those things is like boiling the ocean. With combination products, it sometimes feels like boiling two oceans. Partnership silos are the second set of silos. Our CXO sponsor relationships, legacy pharma suppliers models don't translate well to combination product partnerships. A lot of times managing CXOs, some suppliers try and over-engineer and sell you on things that aren't problems. Like, we have design controls for our components, and you need to understand who the end user is. The first thing in design controls is user needs. And if you don't have an understanding of a user, then you're just producing something that's generic, in which case it's useless. Other companies will miss basic requirements trying to meet perceived expectations. Pharma sponsors need to do a better job of providing really clear expectations. And sometimes CXOs don't really understand the market that they're in as far as combination product goes. The last part, and I think probably the hardest part to swallow and really deal with, is internal silos. And combination product teams, like I mentioned, a lot of them were born out of the 2013 sort of Amgen warning letter. They have this baggage of being tied to license to operate goals, where we want to make sure we're keeping the lights on. And I think that's okay as part of the reason you're around. A lot of times quality organizations want to maintain a state of compliance, and that is certainly really important. But a lot of the attitudes, I think, are to minimize regulatory risk and not necessarily to enable innovation. And so what the focus ends up on, avoiding mistakes, not shaping smart product decisions early, which creates late engagement, siloed execution, and lack of shared ownership. So having said that, there's three levels of harmonization that matter. We oftentimes complain about regulatory harmonization, but I think that's the longest one to implement. And it's the one that industry has some influence, but limited impact on what we do day to day. I think the two that are more important and the ones that will take the lowest time to implement and have the highest industry influence are the way that CXOs and CDMOs for combination products are aligned with their sponsors and the way that drug and device teams are aligned internally. As far as regulatory harmonization goes, ISO 13485 is really the bread and butter for devices. It's being harmonized as part of the device QMSR. It's more or less the law of the land in the US. The implementation date is in 2026. And ICH Q10 is really the way that most pharma companies are setting up their quality systems. And so I think the discrepancy here is that if you look at the way that 21 CFR Part 4 for combination products is set up, it's really an exercise of trying to find the gaps between 21 CFR 820 and 210.211. But most pharma companies are, while they're compliant to 210.211, it's not the whole basis for their quality system. So I think a better, more streamlined approach needs to be looked at between ISO 13485 and ICH Q10. We need to engage proactively in ICH, IMDRF, and really drive for combination product definitions, expectations, and clarity. ICH Q12 on established conditions speaks to combination products now. ICH Q6, which is going through update, is hopefully going to speak to combination products as well. And then we need to foster regulatory trust through collaborations and reliance. Understand why in an area increasing in maturity, you wouldn't want mutual recognition 10 years ago, but we need to be on a pathway to this. We have many products approved in Europe that are not approved in the US. We need to move towards having more regulatory reliance practices like on the drug or device side. Without trust, developers face redundant reviews that delay innovation and patient access without improving outcomes. Now, moving to CXOs, the hardest part is sponsors knowing what they want. Combination products don't follow a template. Each needs a fit for purpose approach. Companies setting clear risk-based expectations early to prevent CXOs for trying to overcompensate with unnecessary controls is really important. Building a partnership model, not a transactional one, making sure that there's alignment on development and submission timelines up front to prevent late-stage disconnects, and embedding development, quality, and regulatory stakeholders from both sides into day-to-day execution, not just when issues occur. I think something really important is right of reference and using CMO's DMF for certain elements, and just having all of that alignment up front and making sure regulatory folks are talking to each other is critical. Mapping out the full product value chain early and making sure you have the right butts in the right seats, and that a lot of times companies will have CXO teams that are focused on a device CXO or a pharma CXO, and just having clear line of sight as to the handoffs and the product matriculation through the value chain is critical. The last part, internal drug and device stakeholder harmonization, even with the right partner, even with the right regulations, your internal teams may still be the bottleneck. Many product development folks tend to try and do a desktop exercise where they'll try and map out QBD and design controls, and they'll add in the clinical trials, and they'll come out with this eyesore of a diagram to try and preach on how drug device combination product development can work. But the need is to establish a shared blueprint. Aligning on what success looks like across the drug and device functions is critical. Integrating key documents like the target product profile and user needs, and some elements of design control and QBD can be really helpful in just making sure teams are aligned. The second thing is identifying and empowering translators. There is a lot of crossover between drug and devices. And while some of the language is different, some of the process is different, there's a lot of transferable skills. Allowing people to move within pharma companies from pharma to device team and from device team into pharma really helps empower translators. And I think that's where the wheels come off. Pharma and device are speaking different languages. If the theory holds that devices and drugs are never going to be the same thing, they're never going to have the same terminology because they follow different processes, and they should follow different processes. If that is the case, then finding people who can understand both, empowering them, having a concerted effort to do that is critical. Shifting the culture from not only a license to operate mindset, but a license to collaborate, making key milestones like transfers and risk reviews something that is joint exercise. A lot of times, like, device teams will have a goal of more or less don't get in the way of the drug development timeline. In the generic space, you don't get in the way of the device development timelines. You need shared incentives. We're all one team. Harmony is the missing ingredient. Harmony is not sameness, it's alignment. The three areas to focus on are regulatory harmonization. We need that, but also the way sponsors and CXOs interact and the way that internal drug and device stakeholders are harmonized in terms of attitudes, incentives, culture, and process. That's what we need.